Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining another episode of the Educational Leadership Podcast. We have another very special guest. Before we introduce our guest, we do want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Ideal Impact. Ideal Impact's giving away hundreds of millions of dollars in public education. So if your district needs unrestricted funds, reach out to Ideal Impact. Okay, today we have another superintendent. We have Superintendent Hill from Paint Creek ISD. Superintendent Hill, thank you for joining us today.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. It's always exciting to have different superintendents because there's so much good things happening in public education. Everybody has different backgrounds and perspectives. Love to hear about your background.
Sure. Yeah. My wife and I have been in small schools pretty much our whole lives, grew up in really small towns, and that's kind of where we have been in our educational career. I've been at various places. I began at Crosbyton ISD, which is a 2A. And then after that, I took a job in Friendship ISD in the Lubbock School District. So that was huge, or in Wolfforth. And then from there, went smaller, moved around to different places. With different positions, but now I'm superintendent at Paint Creek, which is a very, very small rural school district, kind of out in the middle of nowhere. You got to be coming here to get here.
Awesome. And just so everybody understands, when you say small, how many students and roughly what location in Texas are you?
I have 112 kids pre-K through 12. That's the entire school district. Last year we graduated 3 seniors. This year we have 8 in the senior class. We are located kind of in between Haskell and Stanford, not really, but off to the side. Where our school district is Lake Stanford. If you know where Stanford Lake is, that's where we are located. And to put it into a little bit better perspective, we're about 60 miles north of Abilene, Texas.
Oh, wow. Okay. Awesome. Very cool. So obviously you have small class sizes. That's always a good thing, right? So I hear. Love to hear. Share some of the wins that are happening at your district. What's some of the cool things happening?
Yeah, so we've got a lot going on. We're kind of in a unique situation. 7 out of 10 kids choose to go here. 73% of our students are transfer. So we have to create an environment that people want to come in, because we just don't have land wise. We have a huge school district size, but then population wise, we really don't. So we have to do a lot of things with culture to make people want to be here, and that goes with teachers too. Last year we were operating one teacher short. We had to combine classes just because we couldn't get them out here. Um, but this year we're fully staffed, luckily, and we focus a lot. Leadership team focuses a lot on culture and making sure that we just have an environment that not only kids want to be here, that teachers want to be here as well.
Love it. Yeah, that's so interesting. How's the community growing? Eh, I'm I've driven through, that area of Texas. It seems like a beautiful area. Obviously, you got access to a lot of different points. How far is Colorado for you from you guys, for example?
Oh, it's a good ways. It's
Is it
10 hours or so. Yeah.
okay? So not too bad. It's a day's drive, right?
Right.
Uh, if you get up early.
Sure.
Um, so yeah, just what's happening in the community? Is it more like a farming town? I mean, I mean, we see a windmill town. I don't know. I see windmills
Yes.
out.
So it's a little bit of both. Traditionally, the landowners are farm owners, but we've moved a lot towards wind farms and solar farms. So there's really not a traditional community here. The only businesses really, you have the school and you have a Baptist church. There's not a town of Paint Creek. If you look at our address, it's Haskell, Texas. But we have, like I said, our school district boundary encompasses the lake, Lake Stanford. There's a couple of businesses at the lake, but there's no grocery store. There's nothing like that. But we're 10 miles from Walmart. There's a Walmart in Stanford. But we're kind of isolated out in the middle of a nowhere. So the community is not growing, but our population, we've grown about 20% in the last 5 years. Our school district has, and I want to count that to the culture we're creating, but then also, like I was mentioning a little bit ago, we have wind and solar farms. So our INS tax base is pretty high. Luckily, we've had some bonds pass. We're actually out for bond right now as well. Our facilities are top notch. You go to a lot of places, especially schools like our size, and they're struggling with their facilities. And that's one of the things that we don't. I mean, we're at almost $500 million on our INS tax base, which for a school our size, that's huge, because we can
Mhm.
do a lot of new things with this new bond. What we're going out for is housing. We have We have 5 houses right now behind the school. We actually live in one. 2 of them were moved in. They were modular homes last year, the last bond. The other 3 were built or they were brought in the 50s. So you can imagine how much money we pour into those to keep them functional. And that's really our draw. We can't pay teachers a lot more, unfortunately, with that huge INS tax base. Obviously, that goes to maintenance and operation. We can't pay teachers more, but we can provide some housing. We have extremely cheap housing, and hopefully with this bond, we can have brand new houses out here that can convince people to come out here and work for us. Because if you can cut down on the living expense, I mean, you're getting a raise. We took a raise. I was the principal at Albany before I became the superintendent out here, and we took a raise just by owning a home to not owning a home and living in a schoolhouse here. So that's what we're really working on as a recruitment technique for teachers is utilizing a little bit of that INS tax base to build and to build some things that would recruit some teachers in here.
Yeah, that's a creative approach. I like that. Um, so you mentioned the bond, housing. What else is in the bond? Sorry if you may have
Oh,
said that
really?
already.
No, really that's about it. It's 3.8 million, which that's destroying 3 of those houses that are here, and we're building back 4 new brick homes and keeping those 2 modular homes that are out here. That's the biggest part of it. We also have new football field bleachers going in.
Oh, cool.
We kind of looked at turf, but our field is in really good shape. And really what I looked at with that turf was they said that max you could get 10 years out of it. I don't know how many more opportunities we'll have with the bond, with the solar and the wind farms. They depreciate quite quickly. And so looking out in the future, hated to set ourselves up for failure by putting in a huge turf field and not being able to maintain it in 10 years. So we're moving in or hoping to move in some brand new bleachers. And then we've had some issues with our septic system. We've had to move some basketball games because the septic system didn't work. We've spent in the past 5 years over $16,000 on septic work, which for a huge district that may not seem like a lot, but for a district our size, that's half of a teacher there that we could have spent on salary. So really that's about it. Septic work, moving in bleachers, and then we have a route bus, an activity bus, and a school vehicle like a Suburban that's in there. So there's 2 different propositions: the proposition with the houses, and then you have the acquisition of property with the bleachers, septic work, and then the school vehicles as well. So those school vehicles, a lot of people kind of frown on taking out bonds on something that's not going to last that long. But when you're looking at a school like ours, in our situation, when you have quite a bit of money on the INS side, and then your M&O is you're about operating just like everybody else. And so if we could take the ability to purchase a school bus, which for us that's a lot of money pulled out of our M&O. If you could do that out of a bond, you're saving yourself a lot of money to be able to pay teachers and keep the doors and the lights on.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, curious on the wind farm. So we talked about how the community has shifted a little bit, agriculture to this kind of renewable energy. Talk about that a little bit. So is that like a prospective job for graduates? And what's the relationship with the school district for in the farm? Sounds like there's some kind of relationship there.
Sort of used to, you had what was called Chapter 313 agreements. That's no longer an opportunity that we have to get some money from the wind farms. Really, the only way we get money from them is passing a bond. But on the outside, when the farms are coming in, they say we're going to bring X amount of jobs, and so that's X amount of families that's going to come to your school district. Now, speaking from experience of what I've known, this is just my second year here. I haven't seen any student enrolled here because of the wind farms coming in. Generally, they have some workers that are more mobile that move around. And so we don't really have, I guess you would say, a relationship with the wind farms or the workers that are out there. I mean, sometimes they might come to an event or two, but not really. One of the prospective wind farms, we have a farm supposedly coming online in 2027. And so they've kind of started reaching out, and they try to have some community involvement, and they give us some donations about once a fiscal year, which are decent donations, but I think it's just them trying to say, hey, we're coming and we're going to help out in any way possible, kind of as a favor. But we don't, like I said, relationship wise with the workers. And I mean, prospective jobs, I guess kids could eventually work in the wind farms, but we don't really have students that go out and work in these farms, which is kind of interesting since they're in our backyard.
Yeah, that is interesting. And so where do the students go? Where do they go work after they graduate? Is there a common trend or
Not really, kind of different places. I mean, Haskell and Stanford are our closest communities, and they're not huge cities. So our students either go to college and get a degree, or they go find some manual labor in one of those two areas. Oil is kind of semi close to us, and so some could go work in the oil field. But generally, they go to a business close in Haskell or Stanford and work in there. So kind of a wide variety. I mean, last year our seniors, you had one that was going to go off and work in a nursing home, whatever that degree is called. And then the other two, one of them was going to work in the tech industry of some sort, and the other one just went straight. I believe he's working in Walmart. So we kind of have I mean, they go all different directions. There's not really a huge place or one specific area that they go and work in. When I was in high school, so I grew up down the road in a town called Aspermont, which was about 30 miles from here. So
Yeah.
we played Paint Creek and had a lot to do with Paint Creek, but this was before Paint Creek had these solar farms come in. And at the lake, there used to be a power plant, and that was huge. That was the only tax base that Paint Creek had at the time, and that was kind of the jobs of the area. Kids would graduate and they would go work at the power plant, and that was the draw. But then when I was in high school, it shut down, and I remember them talking about how this school district was going to probably have to close its doors if that power plant closed. But then soon after, that's when the wind farms came in, so kind of revitalized. So a little bit different in a sense that it's not a. I mean, the wind farms, I guess, could be a job opportunity, but we don't see a whole lot of that happening. Like when that power plant was here, that was when you kind of had that close knit partnership there. So a give and take on that end.
That's interesting. Yeah, you would think like the wind farms would have some kind of relationship where they're like recruiting, but I don't know much about wind farms. I don't know if that's a full-time job or if it's just out there running on its own or
Yeah, I mean, there's a few full-time jobs out there at the wind and solar farms, but not a whole lot. And really, those people aren't from Texas that are working out there. I mean, you see Colorado, Oklahoma, New Mexico. I mean, they're kind of all over. And I think most of them follow the wind farms around. And most of your
okay.
jobs come when they're building them, when they're pouring the concrete and doing that. And then the maintaining side of it, I don't think it's a permanent. I don't think there's a whole lot of permanent job to it.
So okay, I don't know if you know the answer to this or not. So, you definitely got me thinking with, you got a rural area, you have talented people, smart people looking for work when they graduate. How does it work? I mean, there's a lot of companies that are remote, online. You got marketing companies, you have all different types of companies. If a company like that were to come into a remote area such as yours and recruit seniors to work for that company, does the school district benefit from that anyways? I'm just kind of curious, like maybe there's a I don't I'm just brainstorming with you a little bit. I don't know if there's a way to where some of those students instead of going to work for Walmart, maybe there's a remote opportunity. What does that look like? Any thoughts around that?
I mean, the only thing I can think of offhand without doing a whole lot of research into that is just the possibility of training, or I mean, we get a lot of money from CTE classes. And so if there's some type of remote work that like in the tech industry or something that they could help provide the training during school for us to go through that endorsement path and then them get a certificate, then that of course would be a mutual benefit that we would have because we would have that ability to show that they're CCMR ready at that point. So offhand, that's kind of the easiest partnership, I guess you could see. A lot of them, like with a wind farm, I think the donations is their. I mean, it may be a tax break for them too, but I think that's their way of saying we're helping the school district out because I mean we have a new scoreboard up at the football field because Intersect Power last year donated that. That's the new wind farm coming in. So that's like I said offhand without doing a whole lot of research. Those two are kind of the only ways that I see that partnership forming.
That the CTE that you mentioned, so let's say it's XYZ company selling, a distribution company, they're selling products around the US or whatever, and they come into your district and they say, look, I want to train your seniors to work for, to take on a internship or whatever with the anticipation of hiring them full time. Would the state give you and that company compensation for that training? Is that how it works or?
So if that program is approved by TEA as an endorsement path, so if they approve that program, which there's quite a bit out there, like I said, in the IT world, we can't provide those services a lot of times, but that student has to then take four different classes, three or four different classes along that endorsement path to be a completer. And if they're a completer, then we get a little bit more money for it. Each one of those courses along the path there's multipliers that we get on attendance and funding. And so if that student completes that entire endorsement path that's already approved by TEA, then you get more money for that student when they come to school. And then if that student gets a certification at the end, which there's a list that TEA approves as these are the approved certifications. If that's on the list, then our accountability score gets better when we have most of our seniors with a certificate. Right now, our seniors, we have a welding teacher. He's also a math teacher, and he's phenomenal. And he gets the students welding certified. So he himself is certified in that. And so they do the welds here, and he makes sure that they do them well enough that they're going to pass. And then they go to Abilene, drive to Abilene, and they pass the weld, and then they get a certificate, and then we get a endorsement or a point on our accountability because for the most part, we'll get 100% of our seniors with a certificate of some sort, which makes them CCMR ready, which helps our accountability score with TEA, which again, in turn with that, because he's certified, we get funding because those students are going through those courses like they're supposed to, and then they complete that endorsement path, which gives us more funding for them than if they were just taking home ec and then skipping over and taking an animal science and then skipping over. If they complete that whole strand, then there's more funding possibilities there for us.
Very cool. And with the company that, in the mock scenario I just gave, would that company have to do the teaching at the school, or would y'all have teachers that teach certain textbooks or whatever that the company recommends or whatever? How does that work?
Ideally, we've got the teachers that are certified that are able to do that, but in today's world, that's the problem is having finding people that are A, willing to do it, and then B, that are certified to do it. So, I mean, there's different scenarios. I mean, that person providing the instruction would have to be an employee of ours, but I know that there's different opportunities, like I can't think of the company name, but they provide CTE courses that basically you provide an aide that sits in there and monitors the students, and then they're online going through the instruction with that program. So there's kind of different ways of looking at it. I mean, in the ideal world, you have a teacher here that's certified to do it and they're able to teach it, but especially in rural areas like ours, I mean, it's hard to find those people and convince them to come out. And then just like we have one student that's doing that with our service center, they're doing a CNA course. So she's getting CNA certified, but we don't have the staff that's certified to do that. If we had somebody, that would be fabulous, but they're having to go out and get that training online and then drive to Abilene every once in a while and perform some different things. But we pay an aide to sit in there and monitor that student as she's going through it. So definitely a skill that's extremely beneficial. But I mean, convincing somebody with the capability of being a nurse to come out at teacher pay, especially to come out to Paint Creek, is pretty difficult.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes sense. And are the students able to do actual work, as a senior, are they only allowed to learn it with the anticipation of working after they graduate?
So there's kind of it depends on which strand you're looking at. I mean, the one that I think about offhand, when I was a principal at Knox City, I taught what's it called now? Teaching and training. It's a teaching education course, which we have started that here. But their freshman, sophomore, junior year, they're taking courses to get trained for that. And then their senior year, they are a teacher's aide during that period. So they go to the elementary and they help out our elementary teachers. So they're not getting paid for it, but instead of taking coursework, they have a journal that they keep of like, we did this during this time, but they're able to go and do that. Some of the other ones, I mean, welding, they do welding here, and I've put them to work fixing various things on campus. They're putting a awning up in the elementary right now. Again, they're not getting paid for it at while they're at school, but they're hands-on labor during the school day.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I've always been fascinated by the whole economics of how everything comes together within the district and community, and so it just seems like there's a lot of, with all the technology we have now, there's remote businesses and that sort of thing. So very very cool. Well, I know we're running short on time here. Is there any what are you passionate about in public education right now, or maybe it's a lesson learned or something to share with our listeners?
Yeah, and that's kind of what intrigued me to get my PhD. I'm currently working on my PhD in a program called Transformative Leadership at Angelo State University, and I'm really fascinated with school culture. In that, I think that lends itself to a lot of different areas, to recruitment of teachers, to keeping teachers, to students wanting to come here. I mean, there's so many different facets of school culture that I feel like in today's society, when education is viewed the way it is by the public and by legislators and everybody else, we've got to do everything we can to show the good things that's going on. And so I spent a lot of time studying and researching it, but then also spent a lot of time just in my school district here of trying to build that culture up as much as possible, building it up so that people want to be here, teachers and students, but then once they're here, building it up to where we're able to provide them with an education. And if it's a teacher, we're able to provide them with coaching enough to help them get where they want to get. I mean, if they want to be something else, then we're helping them improve to the point of where they can. I mean, we always want our people growing, our kids and our teachers, and I want my administrators growing and myself as well. And so I'm really fascinated with creating an environment that's conducive to that growth, that allows for that growth, but then also we're able to get done what we need to get done. And I mean, our data shows it's my people here. It has nothing to do with me. They make my job so easy. We have the best teachers. We have the best staff. I know it's unofficial and TEA is not going to be able to release it, but Paint Creek was scored an A. We're an A district from last year. Again, that's not out there because TEA is being sued, but that's an incredible feat. Like I told the teachers and told the board, that's an incredible feat because I feel like the system is set up to show that schools aren't performing well. And when you're able to perform well, when you have an accountability system that doesn't necessarily show that, I feel like we're doing a lot of good things. So I know that's a long answer to that, and there's so much
Yeah.
directions I could go, but I'm fascinated with school culture and school environment and what that can do for school, all the way down to the pre-K kid in a classroom. I mean, what is that coming from my office to the teacher, to the administrators, to the teachers? How does that affect that pre-K kid, and what growth can we see because of that?
Yeah. I mean, that's such a powerful lesson there. And you see it in business too. You can have somebody that works for a company that is very knowledgeable, that knows the subject, but with the wrong culture, they're just not motivated. And I mean, that can spiral off in a lot of different directions. And so, yeah, that's definitely a great focus because that's kind of the nexus or the linchpin and the whole thing. I mean, it's it's a lot more than just knowing stuff.
Yeah.
Um, Very cool. Well, all right. Well, last question here. Anybody else that you've worked with that in public education that as a leader that you think would be a good interview on the podcast?
Man, there's so many people in education that help each other out. I mean, when I stepped into this role, I mean, the list is long and goes on, and even down to the financial planner that we're using, or the financial advisor that we're using for our bond. He used to be a superintendent, and he's provided insight on me on a lot of different areas. But I think one person that you definitely got to go out and talk to. His name's Hector Dominguez. He is the superintendent at Runge ISD. Runge is probably about the same size as we are, but the way I met Hector was he took over whenever I left Crosbyton as the principal. We moved out this direction. He took over at Crosbyton, and so our paths crossed because, of course, he calls and says, "Why the heck were you doing these things, Glenn?" So helping each other out there, but just following him, and I've learned quite a bit from calling him as well as just looking at the stuff that he's posts and does. And he's definitely somebody that's you want to talk to because he's one of the good ones for sure.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we will reach out to him and thank you again for your time.
Anytime.
Yeah, I would love to have you on here again. Okay, well, we will close out. Before we close out, we do want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Ideal Impact. Ideal Impact's giving away hundreds of millions of dollars to public education. So if your district needs unrestricted funds, reach out to Ideal Impact. And Dr. Hill, just want to thank you again for joining us and look forward to having you on again in the future.
For sure. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. And for those that have been tuning in, stay tuned for future episodes of the Educational Leadership Podcast.